Many years ago, Labor Day, Brooklyn, a young Haitian immigrant was savaged by a member of the NYPD, New York Police Department. Used a toilet plunger, put it where the light don't shine, and almost destroyed the inside of this man. He survived, but it brought a song along. And since then, so many people, artists across America and South America, have redone this song. I feel very proud, even though it's a dread situation. So I'm going back in time, Brooklyn, the night it happened. So much trouble in the home of the brave, at the land of the NYPD. Am I an immigrant or am I a new slave, paid for old brutality? I don't think so. Or is it that life has lost its reason? They can't even blame the heat. They're moving like jackals in a hunting season. And the refugee soul is the me. I'm telling you, the immigrants are here to stay, to help build America. Oi, 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 oi. The immigrants ain't going nowhere. They're here for America. Oi, 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 oi. Fighting for a better life, fighting through the grunge. America, don't brutalize your children now. No, we all came here to take the plunge. I hope you understand me. We do 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 do. We do 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 do. This city is now like a sweet soul calypso, a compa and a reggae. Like a punta rock and a salsa samba, a high life bhangra merengue. In other words, this is a different kind of apple now. That is the truth that the haters don't want to face. Still bright, big red and juicy, but a little spicy to the taste. The immigrants are here to stay, to help build America. Oi, 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 oi. Hear me now. The immigrants ain't going nowhere. They're here for America. Oi, 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 oi. They know if they truly want to make it in this apple, they got to turn day to night. America, don't brutalize your new children. Please don't do it. We all came here to take a fight. We hold this truth. We tell that all men are created equal. Bring your huddled masses to our shore. Bring them in the evening time, like the dawn to the light. Bring them, bring them, bring them. Bring all the troubled people to our shores. Remember the words of the founding fathers. Home of the brave, land of the free. Bring them, bring them, bring them. I say now, bring them, 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 bring them. Don't leave them. Don't leave them in Mexico. Bring them, 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 dear. Bring them, bring them, bring them.
King David Rudder, the immigrants. The immigrants are here to stay. The immigrants are here to stay. America, don't brutalize your new children. The immigrants are here to stay. As Rudder says there, that Calypso was inspired by the sodomizing of the Asian immigrant about 2 decades ago, Mr. Louima, and the immigrants are here to stay. Good evening to all of you who are in the Big Apple, as they called it back in the old days. Those of you who are in New York, whether you are in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, upstate New York, downstate New York, the tri-state area, New Jersey, Connecticut, wherever you are in New York, welcome to tonight's edition of Politics 101. The immigrants are here to stay. The immigrants are under attack again in America. Haitian immigrants are under attack. This time they're accused of eating animals. West Indians have gone to America, have been going to America now for a century. At the turn of the 20th century, there was a small wave of West Indian migration to America. Small wave because at that time, West Indians were going to England, our colonial rulers at that time, so-called mother country. And then as we get into the 1960s and the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, bringing African Americans in line with the American Constitution, making them constitutionally equal citizens. You know, the 13th Amendment ended slavery, the 14th Amendment gave equal protection before the law, and the 15th Amendment gave all Americans the right to vote. But those rights conferred on African Americans by the Constitution were denied by the states. States' rights ruled supreme for almost 100 years, and it took the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65 to bring Black Americans in line with the American Constitution. The Voting Rights Act of 65 brought them in line with the 15th Amendment, and the Civil Rights Act of 64 brought them in line with the 14th Amendment. And after African Americans were, in a sense, they won their freedom fight finally, constitutionally. It was no accident that in 1962, Jamaica and Trinidad are becoming independent, and Guyana and Barbados in 66. In many regards, African Americans became independent in 64 and 65. And then there was a wave of migration from the Caribbean to the United States, made possible by the liberation of African Americans. Prior to that, there were trickles, mainly students who went to the United States to study and remained. But now, after the passage of the Civil Rights and the Voting Rights Act, a wave. Go trace it and see how many of your relatives came in the mid to late 60s to America. Many took up residence in New York and Washington, D.C. in particular, other parts of the United States. America has always been hostile to immigrants. whether it was the Chinese who were prevented from coming, the Chinese Immigration Act. And you remember in the early part of the century, immigration to America was based on how many of your kind were in America. So those who were in America in large numbers, Europeans for the most part, they were allowed entry, and so-called minorities like West Indians, not many were allowed. But after the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act, a large wave began to come. So the immigrants have been part of the American milieu for the last 60 years. And in many regards, the immigrants, African Americans, they've grown up politically with us in the Caribbean. Welcome to all of you if you're joining us from Guyana. A little tidbit there on the West Indian connection and Black America, West Indian connection. Lots of contradictions, in Guyana. Our Indian brothers and sisters, because of our ethnic problems, do not necessarily embrace Black leadership. But once you jump on that plane and you get into America, you stop being Indian and you become Black. And so whether you're African American, Indian American, East Indian, American, you become Black once you go through that immigration. You're no longer Indian Guyanese. I mean, America doesn't have any ethnic group called Indian or anything like that. You become Black. We noticed that some PPP members and supporters in Queens are urging Indians to vote for the Republicans, to vote for Trump and the Republicans, because they claim that the Republicans were good. Not I say that, they were saying it. I saw the video, they had this rally, and they said, had it not been for the Americans, the PPP would not have been in power today. Had it not been for the Republicans, the PPP would not have been in power today. Mouth open story jump out. Of course, so many of us have been saying it was regime change, but these things come out in very incidental ways. So they're urging East Indians to vote Republican, because if Trump comes back to power, then the PPP is guaranteed power whenever the elections are held. That's the nature of our politics. We'll see what our East Indian brothers and sisters in Queens and other parts of America do. Welcome to Politics 101. It's a Tuesday evening, and Dr. Henry Jeffrey is here with us. We have a lot to talk about. There is still raging debate over the president's announcements in the National Assembly last week. Many said that they went to the National Assembly to launch the PPP campaign. So much for paramountcy of the party. He launched his campaign using ideas from the opposition, the cash transfer from the WPA, Burnham's free education to the university, and raising the minimum wage to $100,000. All those are ideas that have been advanced by the opposition, and the president went there and rolled them out. Lots of debate, and because when something doesn't belong to you, you're not necessarily invested in the integrity of the thing. You're using the thing because it can benefit you. What pushed the PPP to embrace ideas by the opposition in such a such an open, brazen way. Note when Thomas and the WPA came out with the cash transfer, Vice President Jack Dio said it was technically unsound and it could not be implemented before 2030, if ever. He wasn't hopeful. And of course, the other one, the big man, Teacher George said, he mouth a run, he got away bib. Nandlal said that cash transfers will break up family and it will turn Guyanese into parasites. Here's the PPP, now embracing the thing that will break up family, that will turn Guyanese into parasites, and that is technically unsound. So what has gone on? What has caused this big, massive change? We'll ask Dr. Henry Jeffrey, who is a political scientist, but also knows something about the PPP and how that organization works. Lots of debate on how the $200,000 will be distributed, etc., etc. WPA had a press conference yesterday, and we made it very clear that you can't fight for something and now the government has initiated it, deny your thing. So we said it is a baby step forward, and we outlined what needs to be done to make the cash transfers meaningful. I remember the time we came out with the cash transfer, Jeffrey had pointed to us that he had spoken about the cash transfer, and so he knows something about it. So we'll talk a little bit about how that cash transfer is going to work. Free tuition to the University of Guyana. Again, Burnham's idea. The PPP discontinued it, and now they have resumed it. It is politics. Good evening to all of you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Tuesday evening. This is the place to be at this time during the week, and we continue to talk about politics. We know sometimes you get you all get very frustrated and think that sometimes we talk too much and we need action. We need to go on the streets and all of that. All of that is part of politics. But don't underestimate ideas. I saw some PNC young people quarreling that there's some black young people who are praising Ali for the cash transfer and so on. And my answer to those young PNC people, when you left your coop open and looking in somebody else's coop, people walking for new thing, your chicken gonna be in trouble. Mongoose are gonna go in and eat your chicken. Of course, when the Professor Thomas launched the idea, the leadership of the PNC and the government at that time frowned on it. They never owned it. It was left to the WPA to keep it alive, along with a couple of people, individuals, Lincoln Lewis and others, who, they didn't own it. And of course, the WPA's voice is not as large. So the general base, some of them obviously innocently don't know that it's an opposition idea. Oil wasn't flowing at that time, but the least that our government could have done was, as we asked them to do, is to go to Parliament with enshrining cash transfers in law, so that whichever government comes after them would have to either obey the law or or pass a law overriding it. We didn't do that, unfortunately. So the PPP now can brazenly pretend as though the idea is theirs. And some of our supporters innocently believe so. But anyhow, we are here, and we have to pick up the pieces and move on. Interesting times. Let me bring in Dr. Henry Jeffrey. Dr. Jeffrey, good evening.
Hi, David, and hi to your audience also.
Yes. Dr. Jeffrey, you, as I said in my introduction, you know something about the PPP. You're, of course, well, I think once you told me you aren't a political scientist of such. But anyhow, you understand politics and you know the PPP. Here's the president going to the National Assembly and making some national pronouncements. The fact that he went to the parliament to do it, to the National Assembly to do it, means that he attached a lot of importance to it. And he headlined his announcements with two ideas that are from the opposition, the cash transfer and the free education at the University of Guyana. It rescinded the free education and it poo-pooed the cash transfer when it was first floated by Thomas and the WPA. Your knowledge of the PPP, what do you think could have caused this about turn, and it must have happened in recent times, because in the budget, they didn't talk about cash transfer and all that kind of stuff. So clearly, whatever happened would have happened in recent times. Your knowledge of the PPP, your knowledge of Guyanese politics, what has happened? What changed?
What changed, David, is that we are coming to a next election. That's what changed. And the PPP, there has been an upsurge of notions that the working class is our worst off in an oil economy comparatively. Therefore, they need to do something. And that was the only, what I can say, way for them to go about what satisfying the public belief that people are getting poorer, but in their own context. They're not putting in place anything that will benefit you in the long run. They give you a one-off cash transfer. So the PPP comes now and it says, you have a one-off cash transfer. I'm not giving you this till next year though, which is sensible, because if you give anybody before Christmas and then they spend it all out by January, you're in deep problem. You gotta find something else. And so they'll have to give you next year. But they're not giving you anything that is of great. The minute they have given it, I would say even before they give it to you, you become poorer relatively than what you were. When they give relatively to the rest of the population, those who have, when you give to the rich, $200,000, they put it in the bank or they invest it, they get richer. When you give to the poor man that can hardly have anything, $200,000, he go and spend it, he got to buy food, he got all this thing, he gets poor. He remains the same. So he remains the same, but the rich man gets richer because he doesn't need to spend that. He got that. The PPP is not doing anything here to disrupt their decades-long thing to keep some people poor in the interest of winning their votes. They're doing nothing whatsoever. And let me go back a little bit. You talk about this cash transfer. And this is why what they are doing is so, in a term, disgusting. The PPP signed on to the United Nations the development goals. No? The first goal said that you should have some kind of cash transfer. And that's 2016. The first goal said there should be a floor that nobody should fall beyond. That everybody should be able to live a life and a decent life in this, not being poverty in their own country. And they call upon states, all states, the PPP signed on to this in 2016. You said I did something on 27, but it's not just a result of what was already in the United Nations and what the PPP has already signed on to. The PPP signed on to saying they will provide a floor for all Guyanese if they can afford it, of course, and relative to what they can afford. Well, they can afford it, but you think they provide a floor for you for lifelong? No, because that would make you almost independent of them, because you will have decent food, you will have decent housing, etc. And they don't want that. They want you to run to them for everything they got. So the result is that what they are doing here is nothing at what they promised the UN to do in 2016. They should provide a floor under which no Guyanese, a financial, a livable thing floor, no Guyanese should fall below. And that is what they have not done. All they have done is come and give you some money that relatively might take you poorer than you are already. So I saw it. I said, yes, it's your money. You got to take it. I'll take it. I suppose you'll take it. Are you a resident? Are you a household in Guyana, by the way?
Yes, I am.
Now, with all this confusion that's going around, they have not substantially put Guyana, there is no citizen in Guyana, with them talking about all this what we are making now, that should go to bed or go to sleep or not have a decent life, even they work or not. It's happening in the Middle East. Even if they work or not, there should be no citizens. The United Nations said that the PPP signed on to the United Nations development goals. But they don't want to do it. Because if they only do that, people are not going to be as crawling to them for the $10 and $5. We got a nice house. Well, not nice, but sufficient to live on. A floor, they call it. And that is the first goal, and that was raised by the French. And that was raised, I think by the French, if my memory tells me well. I think by the French. It was raised by the French since about 2012, saying we have enough wealth in the world today for no citizen to have to go to sleep without, without proper food, proper shelter and all that. The PPP doesn't want to provide that for you. If they wanted to provide it for you, and that's why I said on my article in 2017 when I was writing, I said, start, I didn't suggest it. The United Nations study says if the oil countries put 10% of their wealth aside to look after the poor in that way, nobody will go to sleep in those countries. The PPP don't want that. The PPP has not done that. All it's done is gonna get like all the cash transfer, just give you when they feel like, take it back when they feel like, don't do it when they feel like. The PPP is using people as a pawn. And this, as I said, they signed on to the United Nations Development Goal that cash transfer is necessary to stop poverty in your country if you can afford it. Well, if you can't afford it now, I don't know when we can afford it.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey, you're making reference to the United Nations Sustainable Goal
Development goals.
Development
Right.
goal. It's there on the United Nations website. You can see it there.
Go check it. It's number one.
Right. It's there, and so the PPP has signed on to it. Obviously, when the idea was first raised in a public, dramatic way by Clive Thomas in 2018, they pretended that they didn't know that it was part of the UN development goal. Dr. Jeffrey, there are lots of debate as to whether cash transfer should be given to households or to individuals. Is that a necessary debate? And if so, where do you stand?
Remember, I say try your best and take it if you can get it.
Yes.
But that what they're talking about, I don't think I read some of Clive thing. I know what that is not what we intended. The intention was to give people one time.
No.
And it was to be institutionalized.
That's right.
If you want, when I said 10%, remember I'm writing in 2017, oil just found. There's no oil. Clive writing in 2018, oil, nothing flowing. The question was that if you give 10% of what you got, start with the poorest. Start with the poorest. Don't worry that we give the Henry Jeffries and everybody else. Start with the poorest people. And let's see. And do it in a fashion that would develop, but always 10% of what you get from the oil wells. And you know whose ideas was that? That was writers from the United Nations. If these people give 10% of their oil well to this, you can do this. Now today we are getting much more. Many more people would have been benefiting. Many more people would have to sleep. We wouldn't have to have that thing established. This, that. Yes, we would have the prices going up and all of that. And that would, in a sense, would always happen. But you wouldn't have a whole lot of really, really poor people on the streets struggling, can hardly get food, can hardly get that sort of thing, running to the PPP, and PPP cutting their salary, taking back this, trying to, oh, come on, look, we live in these things are not forgotten. In a sense, we do not live in a country that, they're talking about one Ghana, but we do not live in a country that attempts to treat everybody as a one Guyana. That's it. Some people want to exploit the other side. And that is the problem. So, no. So, they have come up, well, it's about them another cash grants, like you give children cash this and you did. And all I can say to you, it will be challenging. It will no doubt have corruption in it all over the place because they have not even properly defined yet what is a household. What is a household? I just come from my place at Pleasant at the line top, and that's what people talking about. Who is a household? And there's a whole lot of joke being made. I don't divide my house in two. The PVV had just come up with this thing now. It's Christmas time. They want you to feel good for Christmas without giving you the goodies for Christmas. They want to give you after Christmas. It's a public relations strategy. You can feel good without having, indeed, you might well feel good before you have something that if they give you and it's finished. So when you spend out all your money for Christmas, you must say, I still got something up the road. That's it. It's just nonsense. If they really want to stick with what they're signed to the United Nations, stick to it. Start with everybody that's poor. Stick to it. Don't bother with what Jeffrey said. Maybe don't want what WPA said. Stick to what you signed to about seeing that nobody lives below a certain level in this society. That is what you should stick to.
Tuition free university education from January?
Yes, but there was always a question of when you can afford it. Remember, I was there when that thing happened. I
Mhm.
mean, but remember, it's the United Nations itself, again, and going back to this, who was saying the loans you are getting, you can't get to the rich. And you remember, the privilege. I think that is how they were putting it. And therefore, the privilege, even health, they were saying you got to get cost recovery. Remember the statement?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And this came from the IMF, from them. You gotta get cost recovery so you can pay back your debt. And look, now that was part of the project. It's well, that was happening. That was projected since the PNC was in 92. It was projected since the PNC was in office, because I went to the international financial institution, and they were big on cost recovery. But cost recovery, all right, I'm not quarreling them. I know who know sufficient economics to do that. I am saying that there is a time that comes when that stops being necessary, and therefore, I suppose what else can you do? But it must. But they are doing it again. The PPP got a thing called gold that is giving as much money at the university. You would have thought if it had a university and the thing in mind, it would have given the university the kind of resources they're spending in gold. But that is not their interest. Their interest is to do things under which they got control. If they had a choice, all the ministries can disappear and just let them sit down at Freedom House or wherever and just manage the country they feel like. That's that's it. So the time has come now for you have money. Everybody knows that. And the way they're going about it without sitting down and talking to civil society, without talking to, they hardly want to talk to the real opposition. They're closing down the public. No, it's they alone doing this.
In case
So
you're just in case you're just joining us, we are here on Politics 101 on a Tuesday night. Dr. Henry Jeffrey, we are talking about the president's announcement last week, Thursday, I think it was, and it has been dominating the news cycle since then. And Dr. Jeffrey's weighing in on those issues here this evening. Please share the link and let those who are not here yet know that we are on. Dr. Jeffrey, you've been big on changing the governance system, and you were saying change it before we go into another election. Have some form of shared governance. You have also been supportive of a clean voters list, biometrics, and so forth. And these are things that you're saying the opposition ought to draw a line in the sand and say, we want them before election. No, and part of the opposition hesitancy has been that, look, the PPP is not going to agree to these things. It's not going to agree to shared governance before the election. It's not going to agree to biometrics and a clean voters list. And I suppose if you were here last week, Tuesday, and we were talking about cash transfers, we would have been saying the PPP would not agree to cash transfers. So you know where I'm going with the drift of my question. Do you think that on the evidence of what has happened there in the last couple of days, that the opposition should be much more aggressive on those two issues, the issues of shared governance, the issue of shared governance, and the issue of election reform?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. It's not Henry Jeffrey or the WPA saying the United States telling them so. Carter been telling them so. Carter left the country saying they don't want to do it, and the country will go nowhere if they do it. The country is gone nowhere, and Carter come back to try to do whatsoever. So I am telling you, this is not you or I. This is a reality of countries like Guyana. There is no separation of power because I don't know, every day, almost every day you wake up, editorials. We must hold the government accountable. One young lady in your, well, now your party, PNC, said only God can help us share. She ended up. I said, this is amazing. She turns to God because it's only He can help us out of this mess. Now, the populace, they have leverage on the government only at election time. So, but you can't wait 5 years when a government doing anything they want. And by the way, it's not that your government, they do what they like to. I can show you had to they walk around the country, people begging people to forgive them. But my thing is, I'm not talking about the PNC government or the PPP government now. I am saying in the meanwhile, in the midterm, this is not an homogeneous society like Barbados. In the midterm, all you have is an ethnic government, a government of one ethnicity, doing what it has. Don't fool yourself. It will have to do things to support its constituents, and it's not going to do it at anything for you at their expense, believe you me. So effectively, you might say that a lot of PNC supporters believe that the PNC has forgotten that, but that's not the point. The point is that you cannot have a situation such as this in the midterm. Louis Serrata tell that in the midterm, nobody's in control. Nobody. And the PPP, you can talk how much you like. You can say what the people do in Ireland. You can say how corrupt they are. Next time when you go to election, get the same amount of vote, maybe more. So nobody's there to hold them accountable. Who's going to hold accountable? Well, it's got to be like in Suriname. Because Santoki can't do anything he like because he got Brunswick sitting there.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here
and
tonight.
That is why you have no way of holding government accountable. You can write what you like all day. Every minute you pick up the government should be held accountable. And then guess who they expect to hold? Poor Aubrey. I guess how they expect him to hold him accountable. Talk a lot. And the government listen to him. They want to talk a lot. Because I don't see anything else. You got to change the system that put you in position to hold them accountable. This is not a normal homogeneous society. So that's my position on that issue. Of course, there's a major problem. When these people walk on, well, I have said so. I have said that the PPP is essentially trying to impoverish African Guyanese to force them to vote for them. I have said so. I have shown this. I think every institution. Look at what they did to the Linden, the bauxite fund. Remember the pension fund? Yeah. Sam himself tell us what they did. When the unions went to them and said, look, let's use this pension fund to develop people and so on. Here they come. They say, oh, well, let's us ask the people. And if they're democratic, why do you think people going to say if you ask them democratically if they want their money? Yeah, take it. Let them ask us democratically if they should give us our oil money and then tax us. The UN has a proposal that says, really, to make the people really involved with the oil, give them all, share it out to them, and then tax them for what you want. Well, let them try that. Let any government try that. See what the people go say. Now vote to get the money. So they did that. And where's the bauxite fund? Disappeared. Maybe Lincoln used to say, Lincoln, well, he's not used to, you can't change that now without it's either a fact or not. He said that it must be the largest sum of money that owned by Africans in Guyana. They destroyed it.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here, weighing in on the president's announcements in Parliament. Dr. Jeffrey, let's change course a little bit and go back in time. I intimated to you before we started the program that I love your column this past week. Part of it because it's political history, and I'm an amateur political historian, because I think it tells us a lot. History, especially in a place like Guyana, where we have not developed the culture of institutionalize certain things. I mean, I have been teaching in the United States of America, and you teach the founding fathers over and over and over and over and over. All right, and so there is a way in which, at the level of the masses, certain things are entrenched. Let me bring up this on screen here. This is the Guyana graphic, December 18th, 1964. Burnham may be the new premier. PNC accepts the U.S. offer. This is the days going on. And then the next big article there on the front page, Jagan hopes for PNC coalition. And the reason I put this up here, and I'm going to leave it there for a minute so that the audience can digest it. I think it was last week I was pointing out that you have today the PPP and its supporters, coursing down Burnham, cursing out the PNC. They don't want to share power with the PNC because there's no trust. And I made the point that the PNC and Burnham, who you all cussing down, Jagan was prepared to serve as prime minister, first of all as deputy prime minister to Burnham in the 1960s, early 1960s. You can go in the Western Trial and see his proposal there that he made in 1963 to the PNC. And as late as 1964, on the eve of the PNC taking power, the coalition, he was hoping to, if the PPP can go into coalition with them. So here is these people who you're saying you have to have trust first before you can have shared governance. Your guru, your God, wanted to serve as deputy prime minister in 1964 under Burnham. And then we come now to 1976, 77 with the National Patriotic Front. And you wrote on that this past weekend, where again, Jagan was prepared to serve under Burnham. And then the 1985, Halim Majid writes a lot about that, the fatherhood government, as they called it, which unfortunately Burnham died. Hoyt came in and he scuttled it. But again, Jagan was prepared to serve under Burnham. It's not Jeffrey saying it, it's not David I'm saying it. It's there on the screen. It's there on the screen. Jagan hopes for a PNC, a PPP PNC coalition. I suppose I've said enough, Dr. Jeffrey. And you wrote your column this weekend talking about this 1976-77 moment. Your thoughts?
Well, there were always people in the PNC who said they should never join with the UN from day one. From day one,
Yeah,
they were
I'll tell
saying.
you a story about that just now. But
Right.
go ahead.
So in 60, you mentioned 64 there,
Yes.
when they were, before the 64, when Jagan was offered by the British, you say Barnum was prepared to serve as the prime minister. Jagan was offered by the British to have a coalition government,
Yes.
but he rejected it.
Yes.
Well, we know now why he rejected it,
Because of the letter you said.
he already sent the letter to the Soviet. Promising to carry Guyana and everybody hook, line, and sinker into the Soviet camp. So he rejected it. At the time, I thought he's a bit thing, but later he came around back, and essentially he did that thing. What by 1976? Remember 1976? Griffin, I'm so 29, 30. I am not in. I am doing this research thing. Yes, I am, and there got people. We were working at the Officer General Secretary in Planning and Research. Everybody there worked for the more or less talk to Jagan. We got to get things together because Guyana has been like this. And that's why I said it was more a moral thing than understanding it as a total necessity. But people, all of us were there, we were saying, this should happen. Shabatin meet me in Safai and say, what are you people telling the leader they're going to overthrow we? Shab. So I don't know that we were telling leader. If you ask me, McDavid was doing more of the telling. He's the boss. So it's easy me Barnum all the time to do the telling. I mean, how it was discussed, that's what I would say, and there was nobody that did not support it. But when Sharp told me that, I said, and this happened after Dr. Reed. And I said in my article, Dr. Reed said the same thing to me when he trying to get me to go and talk with Barnum, to share the Jagan. And then the thing break up again because Corbin said he going to write book about it, about that issue. So maybe I shouldn't say no more. But the point is, how they break up again, that's another story. That's a tragedy for what happened at the PPP there. And that's why it's a tragedy for what? If that is this very, very issue, it is a tragedy. Because if the PPP broke it up for foolishness, for no good reason, Barnum gave in to them. And it was broken up. So the PNC has always had people, as I said, that want to be in the that think the PPP is the right group to be with. And you have always had people in the PPP that thought that was possible. And the 1980 Constitution was constructed according to what Jagan wanted. Look at the 1980 Constitution. It's constructed just for what Jagan wants. The 1980 Constitution more or less said that the Prime Minister will run the country. And that's why I was surprised when your lot got that opportunity and didn't take it. 1980 Constitution almost precise what Jagan was arguing for. Barnum would have been almost the titular president. Well, never going to be titular, but you understand, he still got power, but Jagan would have run the country, Barnum would have relaxed himself. And meet after the attack, the two of them would have reached and talk, and let Jagan do the hard work. When your party came to power, I said, these chaps got opportunity here. You got Moses, right? You got two shots. You have something in your constitution. You promised in your constitution to share power. which is one, which is the most important one. But now you also had a position where you are saying to the country, sharing, we are already doing that. Look, we have all these baby parties. Sorry, David. But we are already doing that. But but guess what? When what you make an agreement with the WPA that was gonna chair thing, you said the laws, you got it. Which law? Which law would I tell you that? I mean, in Jay gonna know everybody. As I told you on this program before, everybody can shape. You can do it informally until you change the law. Why is it just like, is that the intention? And not only that, the batak of the WPA. Oh, they got too much. They ain't got this. It was quite clear that this wasn't just a matter of law. It was a belief in the PNC that the WPA was getting more than they should get, and then there was even that we don't need them no more and all that.
Yeah. You mean the AFC?
The AFC, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I mean, at that time, I said, it's alarming. These people have an opportunity to make Moses Nakamoto the president, the prime minister, and stay aside. Let you run the country. We can't run it without you having say, and fundamental say don't mean you gotta make decision every day. Look at the French president. You see the French president, he got prime ministers around the country.
Right.
Exactly. And so I said, these people are losing their mind. Essentially, let him run the country. Build the WPA. If you want to talk about ethnic thing, build it. Build the WPA, the AFC to win the Indian votes. Instead of that, they crush the AFC. No, the AFC is up. I don't know where they're going with all what they're talking, but that is it. They crush them.
I heard Dominique Gaskin last night on a program, and I chuckled because Dominique said he's no longer with the AFC, but he says if the AFC is going to go by itself in this election, it will draw votes from the opposition base because there is little or no vote to get from the Indian support base of the PPP. And if he were advising the AFC, will advise the AFC to concentrate on the African community. And of course, he said that Nigel is more popular than Aubrey and myself, and so he would get forced to that. But I chuckled because I got a lot of cuss down for suggesting that the opposition should, in the first instance, solidify its own base. And people feel that I was being racist and all kind of stupidness. But I heard him, Dominique, last night talking about that. Dr. Jeffrey, you are of course very strong. And before I go on, let me just say I heard David Patterson on this issue. He said after the big noise with the fact that the Granger said that the Constitution precludes Moses from chairing the cabinet and so on, that what he in effect did internally was that he would start the cabinet meetings, and then after the first introductory minutes, turn it over to Moses. That's how they resolved it internally. But they never made that public because the damage was already done, as you pointed out. And they didn't even bother to make it public that, they kind of came to some kind of agreement internally.
But David, let me say this. Note that move, I don't think it was politically planned. It's part of the negotiations, but that had to be made public to be significant. It would not. This thing is not a little thing between the PNC and AFC.
AFC.
So, no, to me, significant, the population had to know about it. To set up to me, we make a deal and this gonna happen, is again to demonstrate naivety. It can only make a difference if the population knows that Moses is running the show. It will make no difference. They sit down there and think Moses is running the show. What's going on? It's a waste of time. So, these things are said in this kind of a way, and you said it can't be real. It just cannot be real. Whatsoever it is, as you were saying, go on.
Yes. And so I just wanted to point that out, that they had some kind of, but you're correct. You're correct. This was a matter that should have been in the public space. And I'm a member of a party that was part of the coalition. I never knew that until I heard Patterson with it about a month ago on one of the programs. Dr. Jeffrey, is there any appetite? In the country for both at the level of the leadership and at the level of the followership? Is there any appetite for a political solution that goes towards shared governance?
Remember, shared governance is an elite business.
Yes.
So public, there's no public. You got Indian public and African public. So there's don't have a public appetite. If the PPP come up tomorrow and say, yeah, we're gonna have shared government, you're gonna have it. Any other store or the PNC. So effectively you're gonna have it. So that's none more. There's no public. The Indian public and black public. So effectively, that is what happening here. If it's for the parties, elite confusion. And that's why, not Jeffrey, the world is saying that you need to have a more inclusive governance. They're not talking no public. And if the minute you introduce that concept, you introduce a whole lot of rigmarole, because then you're going to try to use this notion of public involvement to say that's why they are denying. Let me tell you, you already heard from Nandila. Oh, well, we will take it to the public. And depend on what the public says, that is what there's no public, period. There's no universal public opinion in Guyana. It's done. You got Indian opinion and you got black opinion, African opinion. That's why you can't hold government accountable. That's why.
I put on the screen there another clip, and thanks to my comrade Dr. Nigel Westmus, who is our in-house archivist, and he has this tremendous skill, and he has gone into all these newspapers and pull up these things. You mentioned at the beginning of this program, Dr. Jeffrey, about the parliament and the way in which the PPP is closing down the Public Accounts Committee and, in a sense, rendering the parliament non-functional. Now, this is the PPP, the Guyana Graphic, October 21st, 1966. And so the PPP is complaining that the parliament barely functions.
In Britain, the parliament, you know what Britain is sometimes called, it's called a parliamentary dictatorship, largely because the party with the majority does what it likes for the most part. And just what's happening now. The trouble with Britain is that it is an homogeneous society.
Yes.
And that doesn't matter as much. Here you got no public opinion like to overthrow Boris Johnson. You see how the public opinion rally and suddenly turn against Boris in large numbers. Here you don't have a public opinion. And that's why the system needs to change. You can't have a system that allows a one-seat majority to spend out all the country. You have to change it. It has to change. No, there's nothing to hold the government accountable in the meantime during election. Nothing. Nothing. And in Britain, there is also nothing. It's like an electoral dictatorship one, parliamentarian call it. The people do what the cabinet says, but it will not going to be the right system for a country like ours. So that's not surprising to me. And it wasn't functioning. It was functioning, but it's how it functioned. You know, it was there. Everybody used to pick up the bag and go in and say, you remember how many times I said Parliament is a waste of time? Indeed, I even advise not to go to no Parliament, mobilize the people around and put somebody else in Parliament. I said it's a waste of time. I've been there for 17 years. It's nonsense. The PPP carry a budget to Parliament and it comes out to the budget just like it takes it. That can't happen in Suriname. In Suriname, you got to take 3 months. And all sort of discourse and all sort of thing got to take place. You can't, if you a minister said, I'll give you answer, don't like it, that is your business. It's not that can't happen. Yeah. You know, David, well, that's what I'm saying. It's madness to try to go back and all right, let me put it this way. The only reason you can want to keep the present constitution is like the PPP. They want total control. They want to think. It's either the others think that they can win a one seat and get total control. They should have recognized that they've already lost that game. That game was lost with Sharon Das. Nobody is going to allow them to do that. They can think what they like, but nobody's going to allow them to get one seat like the PPP. They have to allow the PPP to get rid of them, but even the PPP is under pressure. And now that's why they're trying to buy black people all over the place because they say, hey, boss, you are an Indian government. Sit down and believe that. That is the reality. And you are leaving out a whole lot of all ethnicities. You are undermining Amerindian leadership at every turn. You think they don't see that? A minute Amerindian leader suddenly he gone. First of all, they give some confusion to do and then he disappeared. You think people foolish? So unless that is what the PNC, APNU, whatever they want, that is the plan to do precisely what the PPP is doing on the opposite side. Well, I don't see how they can sit down and want a constitution like we have.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here on a Tuesday night. Dr. Jeffrey was that speech in the National Assembly, the launch of the PPP's election campaign.
What? Oh, yeah. Oh no. The PPP wants to do 2 things, I said. It's not a launch of the campaign. The PPP has not stopped campaigning from the last election. The truth is that the PPP wants to win, to have their cake and eat it. They can't give you the money before election. People a bit vexed Christmas time, but they can't give you yet because they know what happened at Christmas. You ever see anybody, when is whole election? You ever see anybody whole election in February and January when people vex? No, because they're holding it in just around Christmas time and happy. They give you some sort of little handout. You go and you vote for them. The PPP promises you that, so you got your hopes up. You might even go and borrow on it.
Yes.
And a lot of people might go, the people might set up for you to borrow on it. So when you go there, the next thing you ain't get nothing. The truth is, you can't even borrow on it, you know. So you're happy to go and get it. Of course, they want you to get it during the time when election comes. If we were sitting down strategizing for election and you had some things to do like this, what you do? You would give people now. And then by the time you get on to get them next year, and then it's another story. No, that's a nice move. That's a good move. That's a
Yeah, yeah,
decent move.
yeah. Before we go, they there's a talk that the president is going to confirm the acting commissioner in his substantive position, despite the fact that the opposition leader has not given his blessings to it. Nandalal is saying that the president will not be violating any law. In doing so, the opposition has said that it's prepared to go to court because the government is violating the constitution. What says thou?
The opposition might be saying, I don't think the president violated any law. The thing says quite clearly, meaningful consultation. Desiree Bernard did a revolutionary thing and said, meaningful consultation means you must give reasons. The Chief Justice now said, remember during the thing with the chairman of the Election Commission, Granger says, Mr. Granger should give reasons. He ain't give no reasons. But the point is that when you give reasons, it means you can take you to court for the reasons. And that's why they don't like give reasons. If you, when somebody thinks just give reasons and you can give any old reason, I like the man story that you can give good reasons in relation to this, because then I can take you to the court for the reasons. But in terms of meaningful constitutional analysis, in my view, is right. That is not it. But that's not the big quarrel. The quarrel is really about whether or not you can conform him conforming after he has reached the age of that is the big quarrel. Can you conform him after? But again, we come to the problem of the court. This can be a big political matter. And in political matters, the courts are not as reliable as you think. Or the people be undermined. So look, the collective bargaining, where did that go? To this day, I think I've asked you, I ask a lot of people, I said, look, listen to me. The teachers, the court grasp the issue and say, go and sit down and talk. If you talk and you break down, what's your next step? Now back to the court.
Right.
Why you ain't go back? How is this that you ain't gone back to the court? Instead of that, you now start calling people out and strike again. And all manner of things. And then suddenly the whole thing break up and everybody say people under. But the people be undermine it, no question about that. But the issue, it was a simple issue. This court did a thing. The judge there, Passad, he did a good thing. He says, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, go and discuss this matter. And when we break down, it's not back to the court. We go back to the court, sir. We break down. Well, no. It's absolutely the next stage must be, at the end of the day, it's arbitration. And then you got to send you to arbitration. People don't want that. The PPP wants to be the only party that determines what wages public service got. Because the minute you go to arbitration is a question of somebody else making that decision, which is what the Constitution intended. The Constitution intended that the government, which employer alone, should be allowed to determine how workers are paid. So the Constitution intended that. But the people don't want that because they want to keep the public servants impoverished so that they're going to vote for them. They're going to have to have black people running around. So that my take on that.
Dr. Henry Jeffrey here tonight, weighing in on a range of issues, starting, of course, with the president's announcement in Parliament, giving his perspective. And then we got back a little bit in history to talk about the PPP, PNC interventions vis-a-vis shared governance over time. Dr. Jeffrey, thank you very much for coming on tonight, as usual, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you and your audience again, David. Thank you very much.
And to thank you, the audience, for staying with us another Tuesday, another day, as we continue to mobilize and get ourselves ready. We went back in history a little bit tonight and put some things in perspective, so that we understand what is happening in our country. I want to thank you all very much for staying with us. And I'll see you all tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're going to be back with another edition of Politics 101. Until I see you then, stay good. Good night.